Welcome to the After Divorce Conference. I'm your host, Rose Sweet, and I'm so glad you're here. We're going to talk about 4 things very briefly and then on to the other videos and the other content that we have for you. So we're going to talk about me, we're going to talk about you, we're going to talk about divorce, and we're going to talk about this conference. So first about me. For those of you who don't know, I am a Catholic woman who's been through divorce more than once. I've also been through the annulment process and then many years of being single and learning how to discover God's true plan for me and to grow up and to become the woman that God intended me to be in the first place. It's been a wonderful adventure. And I've been able to write books and produce video series and speak at conferences and bring God's good news and lots of hope and healing to people who are facing this situation. Men, women, children, and people who love those who are suffering from separation or divorce. But I want you to know 3 things about me before we move forward. Number 1, I don't advocate divorce as a quick fix for troubled marriage. I don't push divorce on people. Divorce is horrible. The Catechism of the Catholic Church tells us what a scourge it is on the family, on the individual, on the marriage, on the children, on the community, on the church, on the culture, on the whole world. It's not part of God's original plan. So I know there are other ways of being in a difficult marriage that you can take another look. And this is what I help people do in my coaching business is how can you reorder this relationship? How can we reinvent and redo and maybe even redecorate some things so that what seems to not be working can work for us? So I delight when we can do that. Sometimes though, remember there's 2 people in every marriage. You can do all that you can and a civil divorce will still happen. When that happens, I'm here for you. We're here for you. The church is here for you. Number 2, I don't push annulment on people as a quick fix to get out of that old marriage and start dating and find somebody new. That's a trap. So I understand the annulment process and I help people go through it. I help people look at it, understand it. We as Catholics believe that a valid marriage bond cannot be broken except by death. But we also understand that many people enter marriage with the wrong attitudes, the wrong ideas, and even an inability to live out marriage as a husband or wife. So there's more videos about annulment in this. I don't push annulment, but annulment is a healing and holy and healthy way of looking at what happened to us and what happened to me and what's going to happen in the future. It's a good place for healing and closure. So I think it's a beautiful gift from the church, but I don't push it on people. And number 3, I adhere to all of the Catholic Church teachings on love, sex, marriage, divorce, annulment, remarriage. I didn't for a long time in my young life. I didn't really know what the teachings were. I thought I did. I misunderstood them. And I didn't think the church was really our mother who's there to help us find authentic happiness. But when I challenged and dug into the teachings on divorce and annulment and remarriage, it blew me away. It was common sense. It was about teachings that protected the dignity of the person and the deepest desires of our heart. And I was blown away and excited then to be Catholic and to have the graces to live this out in my own life so that I know her teachings are possible. Church teachings on this topic are not a bunch of rigid rules. They are the sure path to the happiness that we really want. So again, I don't encourage divorce as a quick fix. I don't push an annulment on people, and I adhere to all the teachings of the church in this area. So that's the foundation of my work and those who appear as experts and guides in this conference. Let's talk about you now. You might be newly divorced and still in shock. We're here for you. You might be one of the people who's been divorced for a while and you're kind of doing okay, but you're lonely. or you find you're still bitter about your former spouse or your former life, and you want to get rid of that. You might be an adult child of divorce who is carrying unhealed wounds, and you're just recognizing they're really showing up as big obstacles in your current relationships, or you're not sure if you really do believe that God can be a loving father who's there for you if your own father wasn't. So we're here for you if you're newly divorced a long time ago, an adult child of divorce. If you're remarried and you're realizing you still have work to do in healing or getting yourself on track. And we're also here for the never divorced. If you are somebody whose adult children have divorced or your friends have divorced and you're looking for help and hope and ways to help them, we're here for you too. I remember, this is a story about my sister, Barb, when we were very young. I think she was in her very early 20s, and she had a boyfriend that lived a couple hours away, and she was just dying to go see him. So she stole the family car in the middle of the night and headed out on the long freeway in Southern California toward this young man's town. And she fell asleep at the wheel. She was on the freeway and veered off to the right and went down into a ditch, and the car rolled end over end about 5 or 6 times. And how do we know this? Because there was a truck driver about a half a mile behind her in the night, seeing her headlights spinning in the night. And he pulled over, and my sister Barb was hanging upside down. The car was upside down, and she was still in her seatbelt. So her long blonde hair was hanging upside down, and her nose had almost been completely cut off and was hanging from a thread. And blood had poured out of her face that had been cut in a million places and into her hair. And she was a nightmare. The truck driver said he was shocked, but he went into rescue mode and picked her up got her out of the car, took her to the nearest hospital in that town. And thankfully there was a plastic surgeon on duty that night, in the middle of the night. And he did a lot of work on my sister's face, and you can hardly tell she was in an accident. She has a little scar on her nose, but one thing that was unusual, she had what the doctor said, you probably have about 100 shards of glass, teensy-weensy little shards of glass in your face that may come to the surface over the years and come out. And don't be frightened. Just let them work their way to the surface and pick them out or whatever. So my sister was telling me this, and I was like, what? I was looking at her face and it looked healed and normal. But over the years, she did say that every once in a while she'd wake up and feel like a little sore spot and maybe a bump, and she'd push at it and press, and all of a sudden a little shard of glass would come out. It's kind of gross to think about, but I've always used this as a beautiful picture to understand the tragedy and the depths of woundedness of divorce on everybody in the family. You can stitch yourself up and go on and heal, but there's usually a lot of underlying hurt, confusion, lies, fears, like all those hundreds of shards of glass. And over time and with certain circumstances, they can make their way to the surface of your life and cause pain and hurt. One of the things that my sisters told me was, Rose, I'm used to it now, and when they come to the surface, I don't overreact. I don't freak out or get scared. I know that's just what it is. It's a residual from my accident. It's a small thing, and I can handle it. That's good news for all of us. That's good advice for all of us. All of us have experienced huge traumas in life, and divorce is one of them. So we are here for you, as doesn't matter if it's newly crashed and burned or it's been a while. The effects of divorce will still appear in your life. And when they do, we want to be here to help you with faithful teaching, coaching, counseling, inspiration, and most of all, love. So let's talk about divorce for a minute. One of the things that I have struggled with in working with a divorce is the intense amount of anger and shame hurled at the separated and divorced in our church. And this is the quote that I hear all the time: God hates divorce. It says in Malachi. Well, you know what? He does hate divorce. Of course he hates divorce. But he doesn't hate the people who've been through it. He doesn't hate their families. And let me read what also God hates. And this is from Proverbs 6, verses 16 through 19. There are 6 things the Lord hates, 7 that are detestable to him. Haughty eyes. Now, what are haughty eyes? It's a spirit of, I've never been divorced, and I don't know why you're divorced. What a grave state of sin you must be in. It is, haughty eyes is a sense of arrogance and superiority, and it's totally the opposite of humility, kindness, compassion, and understanding. We who minister to the divorced, we're not excusing sin at all. We're saying, look, here's the good news. God calls you out of sin to a life of healing and hope and love and beauty. So there are 6 things the Lord hates, 7 that are detestable to him. Haughty eyes, a lying tongue, hands that shed innocent blood, a heart that devises wicked schemes, feet that are quick to rush into evil, a false witness who pours out lies, and a person who stirs up conflict in the community. Please remember that whenever you hear God hates divorce. Of course he does. But there are many other sins that God hates. We are all sinners. We all fall short. But we are all called to come out of the pain, the sin, and the misery and find the happiness, the holiness, and the joy that God promises. That's what we're about. The next thing you need to understand as Catholic Christians is the church actually permits civil divorce in some extreme cases. Let me say that very carefully. You can find this in the Catechism of the Catholic Church. There are cases where there is horrible abuse, unbearable situations, and a threat to the life or to the security of a spouse and children. And in those cases, the church says you may have to get a civil divorce to protect yourself and your children. However, your marriage bond still stands. You're separate civilly. You can even live apart. But we still respect and uphold your marriage bond. And we are going to try to help you to either reconcile or to take a look at that marriage bond and see how you can live for the rest of your life in a way that's pleasing to God, healthy for you and the kids, and doesn't violate your marriage bond. Or you may go for the annulment process and discover there was something so terribly wrong in the marriage from the beginning that a valid marriage bond never happened. So remember those 2 things about divorce. God hates it, but he hates a lot of other sin. And the church sometimes permits civil divorce. So these are just things that I didn't know as a young Catholic that gives me hope and a sense of security to be able to come to the church and know that I can get answers that are life-giving and make common sense. Let's talk about this conference. Now, I wish that we had the time and the resources to cover all your problems, all your questions, and all the topics related to divorce. We can't. But hopefully in this conference, we'll be able to address the most important ones and introduce you to some wonderful priests and laymen and counselors and therapists who've been through it, who understand, who are here to help and guide you and your family through the dry and sometimes dark desert of divorce. So we're here for you. Let us know how we can help you. And just remember that divorce is not the end. Divorce is a sorrow, a suffering, and a falling down on our journey in life. But as our Lord got up in the carrying of his cross, we're here to help you get back up and carry your cross so that you can rise again in glory from this terrible time. in your life. God bless you.